to lead with impact, vision to victory. To set the stage for what's ahead, we have two powerhouse leaders who embody excellence in executive presence, communication, and career acceleration. First, we're going to have Rosemary Ravenel, a world-class executive speaker coach, TEDx speaker, and media expert with decades of experience shaping influential voices in leadership. And as America's premier bilingual public speaking coach, she has helped top executives amplify their impact and master the art of commanding a room. And joining her is Dr. Andrea Clark, an expert in healthcare and STEM leadership development with a career spanning clinical sciences, global health, and workforce upskilling. She has dedicated her life to empowering professionals with the skills they need to thrive at the executive level. And together, they will guide us in unlocking the secrets to leading with confidence, strategy, and purpose. So please join both Rosemary and Andrea to the Lead with Impact. Hello, everyone.
So happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation, Grant.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to see you both today.
Well, we're going to jump right in. We want to encourage also the audience. This is a live session, so it's an opportunity for you to learn through Q&A. So if you want to put your comments into the, if you're joining us on LinkedIn, there's other platforms as well, please do so we can answer these questions live and get a lot out of this session. And we're going to debunk like 3 common myths today. We feel that these were the 3 common things that are really on people's mind when it comes to public speaking. I got to jump in with Rosemary. Here's myth number 1. Great speakers are born, they are not made. What are your thoughts around that?
That is a very easy way for people to find excuses why they should not be speaking in public. Because underneath that myth is a big one, the macro one, that fuels that is that public speaking is the number 1 fear of all human beings. Yikes. There are studies that show that if you ask the question in that context, people will generally say that they're afraid of public speaking. But more scientifically, it's about performance anxiety, about rejection, about feeling inferior, about being embarrassed, right? But so I guess we could say that categorically people are afraid of public speaking if they don't believe that they can do it, that they have something important to say. So there is a myth, yes, that oh no, so-and-so Grant is a natural born speaker. Doesn't he sound like he's totally confident, poised, in charge, in control? I want to hear more of what he has to say. But that's not correct. Yes, you do have a lot to say and you are a gifted speaker. But the point is there's so many across time. Historically, we have examples, and that maybe illustrates the point better. Take going back to ancient times of Greece. There was, the oratory tradition started with Aristotle, right, of all those guys in robes. But there was one in particular named Demosthenes. And Demosthenes is famous for being an orator, but because of his origins. He had a stutter. He had a weak voice. And he had to defend himself and his family interests in the big arena, but he was laughed at. So he decided he was going to take several months and train his voice and train himself to be a speaker and to be on par with his peers. And he did. He put pebbles in his mouth. He did all kinds of rather extreme ways of training his voice and his mind to be a speaker. And he succeeded that way. So Demosthenes is sort of the father or the poster child for those who think that they can't speak. In modern times, we have Warren Buffett, for example. And Warren Buffett, we know, is an icon, of business, but he was terrified of speaking in public and actually went to Toastmasters, ran out of there. He was so afraid. Then he enrolled in some other courses and then recognized that the communication is currency. It's the currency of life. And he's been quoted widely as saying that you can have the greatest brain power in the world, but unless you can transmit it, it doesn't serve you. And that transmission is communication, is speaking.
Mhm.
So you have to have both in order to really be successful in the world. And so those are two examples. And then to that, we can add, people who are have been classified as extroverts, who are really introverts. Famously, Barack Obama is one of them. And we know about his oratory skills, but he is a self-defined introvert, which would sort of challenge our thinking as to extroverts being out there and in the stage and comfortable in the spotlight, whereas introverts are more bookworms, more private, more reserved.
This is interesting conversation because you jumped right in. I love how you have those two stories. It took me back even to my high school days and remember those oratory type episodes, back in those tragedies or comedies or however you want to look at those things. Very, very important. I want to, Dr. Allen, would you like to chime in on it? What do you feel about that particular first question? That myth number one, do you feel that it's been good for you, been bad for you? I mean, that you were born, or did you have to remake yourself into a good speaker?
I think speaking your communication styles, as you said, is something you develop and evolve over time. And I really appreciate, Rosemary, you giving us that insight on like Warren Buffett and these heavy hitters in their industries. And you would just assume, right, when you see them on or hear them on podcasts or see them on world stages, you would think that they just came out of the door with these strong communication skills. But I love that she even said even great thinkers such as Warren Buffett had to upskill, right, and master his craft and communication skills, because that is the common thread that connects all of us. So I really appreciate you kind of touching back and talking about leaders that we all know, like, and trust. And we talk about how, if you're an introvert, I think I'm kind of more extroverted. So I've always had as my school teachers would say, the gift of gab. I remember one time in my middle school, one of my teachers, she sat back in the class and she had all of us go back to, our seats. And she said she strategically watched me stop by everybody's seat. And I talked to each and every person. And she said, how did you do that? And I didn't know, right? But I see that communication style, I actively listen, I take away key terms and things that people are interested in, and I just remember those things, and I have a curiosity, right? And I think when you honestly and authentically have a curiosity of other people and an insight to learn more about other people and global leaders such as yourself, you're just always going to find different ways and styles on how to increase your communication so you can learn more and pull more information out of, other people as well.
Mm-hmm. Andrea, to your point, I think it's so important to I want to highlight a very important word you said, curiosity. Mm-hmm. Curiosity is to me a magical word, because I think that if you're a successful speaker, of course, there's many different reasons why people speak, but I think that if I'm speaking, I owe my audience a spark of curiosity to know more, to want to explore a topic, to want to improve themselves, to want to have conversations with others about a topic. Mm-hmm. So really to expand people's thinking. And so the curiosity is something that's, I think, important to our evolution as individuals as well.
That's fantastic. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah. All of those things are important. And definitely, our audience has been a little silent, but we know that from studies that some of the biggest challenges are around nerves, clarity, engagement. I know I have found when I am very clear about what I'm going to talk about, I don't have as much nerves. But if I'm a little bit unclear on the subject matter, that is when I start, the nerves, the butterflies start creeping in more than normal, because I'm just a little bit unsure of myself. So I lack some confidence. And then any little thing that occurs during, like now we're live, any little thing that comes up, I'm like, oh, then I'll have that, moments of anxiety. Let's put it like that. High anxiety, right? Mm-hmm. So we're going to move to myth number 2. And we're going to move this over to Dr. Clark. And we're talking about pauses and silences. Are they bad in communication, or is it something that could be very powerful? What's your take on this, Dr. Clark?
Well, they're definitely not a bad thing. Silence, capitalizing on silence is a major art that is skill that we can all master. As I said, if you're someone like me and you're always talking, it's something that you do have to develop and learn over time. I think it goes back to your point. We all kind of have issues sometimes with anxiety. So a lot of times, whenever that silent moment comes up in a conversation, we have a natural need to kind of jump into the silence because it makes us feel uncomfortable. It makes us feel like, okay, I need to fill the space, right? And talk. And I noticed this a lot when I was the national director with Mayo, and I would interview a lot of candidates throughout the US. And I noticed whenever I'm interviewing and I'm asking them a question, and if a silence happens in that interview, they would jump in and they would answer the question, but they would answer the question incorrectly because they didn't capitalize on the silence. They didn't take a moment to say, that's a great question. Can you give me just a second to think about that, So now they're so uncomfortable with silence that they're just throwing, information across the wall. And now that makes me think, okay, how attentive is this person to detail, right? So a lot of times when we don't capitalize on silence, what we diminish in that, right? So let's use silence as an acronym. So the S, we're going to stay present. Right? So you're fully present and engaged when it comes to a conversation without rushing to respond. So then that I gives us time to interpret our intention, right? We're going to use silence to access, what's the intention? What's the meaning of this question, right? And also, this is something very important with the L in silence. We're going to use that to listen actively, right? We know the difference between passive listening skills plus our active listening skills. We want to actively listen to understand instead of thinking about what to say next, right? So we want to respond instead of be more reactive. And then that E, we want to emphasize key points, right? You want to pause before or after any critical statements to make sure that specific statements are able to stand out and resonate with your audience, right? So then we have our N for silence, and then we want to navigate your emotions. We all, get nervous. We have anxiety. So you want to use that silence to capitalize on it, to manage your emotions, kind of a quick, deep belly breath, whatever you need to do in that moment to navigate your emotions. And then C, we want to make sure we create, as Rosemary highlighted, curiosity. A strategic pause can make others more eager, right, to hear you, to hear what's coming next, to engage and lean into you, right? And then last but certainly not least, we want to use the E in silence to establish authority, where leaders have strong communication skills and they use silence to project confidence and control. So silence is definitely golden. And when it comes to communication skills.
Rosemary, you got to jump in on that.
You said it all, Andrea. That's fabulous. I love that acronym. I might just steal it from you.
You can have it.
It's great. No, we could talk an hour. We could talk a whole workshop on silence because there's so many dimensions of it. Not to exclude that silence is a wonderful way to disarm anger and intention and conflict, right? The 5-second pause is a very potent device to give people space to not accelerate or throw fuel on the fire of an argument. And we know that from our family communication, and of course, it spills over into every aspect of life. But the pause and silence are as important as the words that we say. And so many people who, for example, when I'm engaged with a coachee and people say, well, I want you to get rid of my filler words. I want to get rid of the ums and ahs and the likes, and I mean. Great. Those are they're extraneous really, because what they mean is that you're not thinking clearly. You don't have an intentional reason for speaking. It's a byproduct. What you're missing is the clarity of idea. What do you want to convey? What's the gift that you want to give to your audience when you're speaking? So we tend to clutter our speech because we have these mental pauses and we like to fill them with chatter. Whereas the pause, the silence, the breath is so powerful. It changes our pacing. And I'll give you a pro tip. When you want to grab someone's attention, you're in the middle maybe of a talk, you take a step a little bit forward towards the audience, in this case, maybe to the camera. You take a breath and a pause. It's almost that pregnant pause where people have high expectation. Oh, she's going to say something really important. Wow. She moved closer. She's revving up to this big moment. And it's so simple, but you can play with those devices. It gets a bit of stagecraft, but again, that's all available to us. It's just knowing how to use them and where to use them. Yeah. Now, when I was doing live television many years ago, that of course the silence is absolutely forbidden. You don't want a second of silence. So that's like, that's one environment in where you don't play with this, but you can take slight pauses in the rate of speech and the rhythm of your statements so that you create more interest. No one likes to hear a one-note samba, which is just very, very staccato, very much like artificial intelligence is doing now with recorded books and such, where it's an AI voice.
This is important. I like how you brought up context. Depending on the context of where you're speaking, is it a one-on-one? Is it a webinar like we're doing now? Is it, a live TV production in which sound is a premium and knowing how to do that? I remember so many speeches, as you brought up, the difference of oratory style, like a Barack Obama or a Joe Biden or now a Donald Trump, and they all have different styles. One, I would say, you're like, wow, that is a professional speaker. Others, you would say, maybe they need to polish that, but maybe that's just their way of doing things. The other one stuttered a lot. I remember Joe Biden, he stuttered a lot, but they all had a different style. But the whole point I've always said is that it's not so much how you speak, which is very important, but what did the person hear? What did they listen to? What did they get out of that communication that you stated? And I know one thing for certain. When you pause, people lean in. And to your point, and you know what you're about to say, and you know this is your crescendo point that you're making. We're bringing all this together. And everybody goes, they want the aha moment, like, oh, I understand. It's that moment of clarity or enlightenment. And that's probably the point they're gonna, after we all go away and like, what did you remember from this conversation? They remember that aha moment because you crystallized it to a point of making it memorable, right? That's the whole point of that. I think both of you nailed it when it comes to that. We got to jump now. And I still, my audience, you guys have been silent. And I know you're listening. We know you're out there because we can see you.
Yeah, and it's good, Grant. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but it's good to ask the audience, what are some communication hangups they may have, in their communication style, because we can always better our best, right, when it comes to communicating and being more intentional about how we communicate and deliver a message. So that's great.
Right. Let me also invite the audience. If there's something that's a burning question that hasn't come up so far in our live, please put it in the chat, because this is an opportunity for us to learn from you as well. This is a two-way conversation.
Yeah. Absolutely. And while they're thinking about that, we're going to go to myth number 3. This is a big one because it's called vulnerability. You said it earlier, Rosemary. You said, I don't know who coined this, but it became a thing, like I'd rather be dead than public speaking or something like that was number 2 in there, whether be in the casket or talking over the casket. Like, I didn't think about that.
Yeah, right? Exactly.
Right? That shouldn't be like that, but that's that vulnerability. Vulnerability is a sign a weakness, and no one wants to project weakness or be looked upon as so and I'm on stage being weak. This is like the ultimate time not to do that. I want to ask Rosemary around that, the vulnerability as a sign of weakness. Let's talk about it. Can you unpack that a little bit for us?
Sure. Well, vulnerability is defined by most people as exposing yourself, sort of like laying bare, your foibles, your mistakes, your weaknesses, and that's something that we've been taught, perhaps as a society, to hide. Whereas there's a wealth of research, Brené Brown being one of the foremost proponents of really embracing shame, vulnerability, and all these as equally important as our strengths, and that's part of our being human. But we have the psychological block of saying, "Oh my God, I stumbled, or I jumped over a whole section, or I went totally blank on the stage and I didn't know what to say, or I stammered, or I said the wrong word, or I can't let them see me sweating." Some people have very profuse expressions, physical manifestations of fear. They get sweat, perspire, they shake, their mouths get dry, and they don't want anyone to see them like that. But that's totally normal. And the point is that if you embrace it, first of all, what you resist persists. Mm-hmm. So if you think about being nervous and you think about perspiring, you're probably going to perspire more. Mm-hmm. Secondly, when you become transparent and vulnerable and let people know that you're feeling something that they will relate to, that will make you far more likable, more trustworthy, because people want to connect with others like them. Yeah. It's tapping into that heart space of, yes, I feel you, I see you, I'm like you, you're like me, I can relate. Because if you have someone talking down to an audience, it's not nice. It's what you maybe we all went through this in school, right? A teacher, a principal, someone of authority is telling us what to do. But if you talk with and you give, again, that concept of giving a gift to the audience and recognizing that it's not about me being the speaker or any of either of you, it's about them. What are we giving to them? And when we flip the equation and make it about them, then it just takes so much pressure off of us. Because it's what they take away, what they've learned, what they will remember. We know if someone goes and listens to Grant speaking, and then somebody asks, "Well, what did Grant say? What was it about?" You say, "Oh, he told this story that was just amazing about a time that this and this happened." It relates. And then they will internalize it. And then that will give them the ammunition to do something good and great and stretch in their own lives. So it's extraordinarily powerful when you let people see your cracks, because when through the cracks is where the light comes in, right? Through those cracks.
Hunter, I want Andre to jump in on that, because wow, we're being vulnerable right now.
I know. I'm really processing. Yeah, I'm really processing what Rosemary stated, allowing people to see your cracks so the light can come in. Bravo, Rosemary. I really like that. And I think when it comes to vulnerability, everything, that echoing what Rosemary said, but I think a lot of times, because I work with, healthcare professionals on a global scale. So I work on the weekends a lot doing workshops, and I noticed that I get more engagement when I put me in the story. And like Rosemary said, I'm not coming in to just talk kind of down on the participants, but I'm saying where you're at, I've been there. And people like people that's like them. We like to see ourselves and, our speakers or anyone that we're connecting with. So I think just to echo what Rosemary said, it builds a level of not only trust, but connection. So whenever we're doing public speaking or virtual speaking, how are we connecting with our audience? When our audience engage, and I just saw a comment pop up, that means we've reached a level of connection that we know that energy, right, cannot be lost or destroyed. So it's that energy has been transferred. So then they're engaging and they're communicating and they see this conversation is something that's relatable to them. So I like I said, I'm still kind of reeling off of the cracks, the light shine through, but I definitely think that vulnerability is a great way to connect with your audience and show people that, you know what, I'm just like you in a lot of ways. I've had these experiences. I put a lot of my examples in whenever I'm teaching executive leadership to let people know it is a journey. We're all on the journey at different moments and points in our life. And then to go back in areas of the journey that people can relate to, right? So that's good.
Well, I tell you what, we got about 5 minutes left. We would definitely want to recap some of the learning that we're going through. And I love from the vulnerability standpoint, some of the best speakers right now, they're using this as part of their stage, meaning is that when they first go up on stage, they air their vulnerability. They tell a true story about themselves that you would not think that they would be talking about right now. And that brings the audience in and it builds honesty, especially in a world now that there's not a lot of transparency of honesty. You always got to question. Well, you don't want to question your honesty, or are you being authentic? You want to establish that as first and foremost. So during this time, Rosemary, as we've gone through these 3 minutes, you do this for a living. You have been awarded and recognized for helping people to speak clearly. What are some clear takeaways for you?
Well, again, it starts with your authentic message. What is it that you have that's uniquely yours that you can impart to make the audience better? So it's about it's that gift. I consider it what's in that box with the bow. What is it that you're giving? And it really should come from your expertise, from your emotional core, from your lived experience. I mean, lived experience is always the strongest bond for trust. I've been there. I've been in your shoes. I've suffered those blows. I've overcome them. You can too, right? The rags to riches story, the overcoming obstacles of climbing mountains or overcoming some terrible disease, dealing with looking at fear right in the face. Those are the heroes that we reward, right, with our attention. So those stories, each of us has stories in different dimensions. So that I say to people, do you want to deliver a canned speech, a performance, or do you want to give people something that will inspire them and motivate them to action? Because every speech, every presentation should have a sense of what is the call to action? How do I want my audience to think, feel, and do after I finish speaking? And if you have those 3 building blocks, how do you want them to think, feel, and do? That's important, because otherwise all of that just evaporates into thin air. So if you have a sense of purpose, my purpose today is to share with you this story that will help you think and feel and believe that you can do something. That's very, 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 very strong motivator, not only for the audience, but for the speaker. It helps you organize your ideas. It gives you a path, a roadmap as to how to structure. Because sometimes people just talk for the sake of talking, and then they get off topic because they get nervous, and then they keep, and then at the end, say, I forgot to say this. I forgot to say that. It gives you structure because you know where you're headed and what you want to leave the audience.
That's important. Last, we got a minute and a half. Go ahead, Dr. Clark.
Well, I am excited that Rosemary not only has imparted so much wisdom in speaking styles and frameworks for us to follow, but she'll also be joining us as a keynote speaker for our Lead with Impact Executive Leadership Training, Secrets to the C-Suite. She will just go in a little deeper on her expertise and really impart some wisdom, knowledge with her, decades of experience when it comes to how to speak as a leader without saying a word. I'm even very much intrigued in that. So I would employ people to look online, go to upskill.edu/events. Get your tickets today. They are selling very fast. And let's, deep dive into these executives and these stellar individuals such as Rosemary, myself, Latasha Barnes. We have an executive chef coming in, and we can really teach you, how to exemplify yourself as a leader on so many levels.
This is wonderful. We've got just a few seconds here. Rosemary, they want to get in contact with you. What's the best way?
It's my name is my URL, rosemaryravenel.com. You'll see the contact page right in the homepage. Drop me a line. You can schedule a 15-minute conversation with me. I've got tons of resources, but mostly come to the session on March 23rd, well, March 22nd and 23rd, so that you can take advantage of this wonderful brain trust that we have right here.
Absolutely. And we'll be back next week again, Friday, 3 p.m. Get your pro tips directly from the professionals. We want to thank you again for taking the time to tune in to us on your Friday. This has been wonderful. Again, have a great and stellar weekend. Look at that. We got another from, what was it? Oh, Miss Coles that says, thank you for all these valuable tips. Thank you for tuning in today.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.